little bit of background. I'm a career facilities person. U.S. military, Air Force, got out, kind of wandered around, figuring out what I was going to do with life. Went to work for an industrial battery factory in Cincinnati, Ohio, long before OSHA was part of the deal, so red lead, fiber, you name it. Worked for HP, Hewlett-Packard for many years, Oracle many years, Boston Properties many years, Lincoln Property many years on the commercial side of things, and now 19 years with SAP as a senior facility manager at a kind of a global level. So 6 years ago, almost 7 years now in December, SAP decided that sustainability was, should we or should we put it this way, we moved it away from water cooler talk into part of the business discussion because it was a business decision. We create software for Fortune 500 companies all over the world, and we created the software around sustainability, supply chain management, all that other stuff that falls under the big umbrella of sustainability. Fortunately for me, where my home office was in Palo Alto, California, which is just south of San Francisco, the first chief sustainability officer of SAP was assigned to Palo Alto. So I got to sit right next to him, and as we moved from the hypotheticals to what we call the enabler part of it. So there's exemplars and there's enablers. Exemplars is what we do, and enablers is what we help other people do. As we were trying to sell software solutions to other companies, they were asking us questions, well, what about you? What do you do? Right? If we're going to buy software from you, you better be able to walk the talk. So he called me in his office one day, and he said, what about sustainability? I said, well, what about it? Well, we need to do something. I said, okay, well, pretty simple. Solar panels, X, sounds good. Okay, how much? So we had to run the financial analysis. I tried to explain to him in facilities terms that many of these projects or many of these initiatives that we want to embed into our DNA, our business DNA, are nothing new to facilities. We've been doing sustainability forever, and I'll give you some examples here in a second. So as we moved away from just talking about it to doing something about it, where does that fall on? The majority of it. Facilities people, right? EV charging stations, photo cells, food service, whatever that may be, waste management, water management. So I convinced him that what we should be doing is really creating business cases for sustainability. Now, let me give you a little caveat to this. I'm a sustainable person, and we all are, right? We want to leave the planet a better place for our kids and all the stuff you hear. But I'm also a pragmatist. Some of the things are proposed by many people across the organizational food chain are impractical to do, either physically or financially. What's the return on investment? What's the internal rates of return? So we have to have these kind of conversations with ourselves about, what's the demand organization saying? What's the conversation really about? I mean, sustainability is a good thing, right? Everybody agree? Yeah, okay. But I'm from California, and I'm not a redwood tree hugger. I'm not a rock licker. I drive a gas-powered vehicle, although EVs are cool, all good. I'm a Tesla shareholder, to be very transparent. That's a great thing. But I'm also a facilities pragmatist. Cool? So when you're hearing these things from me, it's because I practice these things. All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to talk about some of the historic pieces of sustainability. You'll see some fun stuff coming up. What are some of the fundamental drivers? Fortunately for us, in 2015, actually 2017, the UN signed on to what they call the Sustainable Development Goals. So it gave us kind of focus. There's 17 of them. So it gave us kind of focus things. Okay, let's pick that one, let's pick this. Because again, the topic of sustainability is a big umbrella, right? There's a lot of stuff that falls underneath it. What are the success criteria around creating new programs, implementing new things, projects, whatever that may be? There's definitely some for me, my experience and my team's experience, like I said, I work on a global level, so we have these conversations all the time. And what are some of the new frontiers? What's happening tomorrow that could be changing our game? All right? First thing, sustainability's been around a long time. I did it, if anybody done Ancestry.com? You know, you trace your ancestor? Oh, I found out one of mine here. Ugg Morgan, supply chain management. Sustainable, right? As we moved from the plains, then we moved into caves and we become tribal. I mean, they had to move from, like relocation, we had to move from location to location, and we had to find food, and we had safety and security, sure. Great Uncle Noah Morgan, construction manager. Well, where did he get the wood from? Trees. Sustainability, right? Or you could also kind of say, well, he was also involved in water management. Okay, whatever. Design and construction. Mester Morgan, Atlantis. Well, they kind of screwed up on water management. Some say it's at the bottom of the sea now. Oh, who knows? The Incas, Coital Morgan. Roads and grounds. Think of all the things that we do around sustainability, roads and grounds. Landscaping. You know, moving away from gas-powered vehicles to electric-powered lawnmowers and getting rid of those noisy leaf blower machines. And what do you do with the yard waste? And no chemicals and water management. They've been doing this for a long time. Magnus Morgan. Waste stream management. Imagine the waste at the Coliseum when they have these gladiator things going on 3 or 4 days a week. Not a lot of trash. What did they do with it? Well, back in those days, they actually burnt it, or they put it in landfill and built buildings on top of it. Of course, pretty tough to do that nowadays, but whatever. Biophilic design is nothing new to facilities people. Anybody know the term biophilic design? Heard it? It's creating this indoor environment with plants and cool colors, and it's called mimicking nature. Well, she did it a long time ago. Pretty cool courtyard, yeah? Indoor air quality. So nothing new. So when did it really kind of start getting, the term sustainability, when did it really start getting a focus? Well, it started back in 1952, actually. In 1952, they had this, what they call a cold air inversion layer that sat over the top of London. And back in those days, they burned coal for heat in their homes and factories. And so this cold air inversion actually pressed the air back down over the top of London. For 5 days, basically, you couldn't see from me to you. They said, well, wait a minute, what are we doing about this? So actually, it first started the idea of, hey, wait a minute, what are we doing here? In 52. First Earth Day, 1970. Anybody participate in their company's Earth Day programs? Yeah, cool thing, right? The cool thing about it is it gets the employee, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, it gets the employee base engaged in something, right? It's one thing to have the C-suite talk about these things, but what are the people at the bottom up, what are they doing about it? In 1962, and this is actually a pretty cool book if you want to know more about the depth of how far back this goes. Rachel Carson created a book called The Silent Spring, where she actually identified global issues around the topic of sustainability. Obviously nowadays it's a lot deeper with the burning of the rainforest and all melting of the ice caps. I get all. I'm not a scientist. I can just tell you what they say. 2015, we talked about the Sustainable Development Goals. We use this as one of our practical tools, so we can get 1 or 2 or 3 things that we actually can do something about and use it as a focus. This is actually a cool tool. You go on the website, look, and you can click on something like no poverty or equal wages or human rights or whatever it may be. We used one a few years ago about saving the oceans. So how many of you heard about all the plastic problems we have in the oceans? There's couple places in the world where they have plastic islands that, the currents meet and they create this big whirlpool, and there's tons and tons. And there's one out of the northeast coast of Hawaii, a plastic island that's the size of Texas. So this is one thing that we decided to do, was to say, okay, let's pick one or two initiatives that really we can do, for number one, that makes sense, that we can get people engaged. And this is a big takeaway for you. If the people in your organization are not engaged at the bottom-up level, it's not going to happen. I'll leave that like it is. So what we did was we said, look, how much single-use plastic do we consume across our portfolio globally on an annualized basis? It was a lot. Plastic water bottles, spoons, knives, forks, cups, you name it. Go through the laundry list of things. And I gave some proof points. I said, well, let's just take one location for an example. And we walked around. And probably some of you are guilty of it, but you've definitely all seen it. Go to somebody's desk, they have 6 bottles of water there, right? Some of them half drinking, other ones, they take some home, whatever the story is. Right, well, why didn't you just finish the one you had? Well, what happens to it when it gets thrown away? It goes in the trash, and then what happens to it? Well, there used to be an opportunity to recycle plastic, but majority of the recycled plastic in the US right now and other parts of the globe get put on container ships, high carbon footprint, get sent to China for repurposing. China stopped taking it. There's no more capacity, so there's other countries in the world that are trying to backfill that. So what we said was, let's remove all our single-use plastic. Wow. Talk about a culture shock. But I also created a business case for it. In the US alone, just the US, $200,000 a year in single-use plastic that was wiped off the map. So it saved the company's bottom line. 200,000 times Brazil, times Mexico, times China, times whatever. It's about $2.5 million bucks. Converted constant currency into euros, it was like $1.9 million, 1.9 million euros per year in just single-use plastic purchasing. That is not the waste stream diversion programs. It's not getting rid of it. It's not. So fortunately, kind of the COVID cup half filled story. When we decided to do this is when we had to shut all the buildings down because of COVID. So when people started coming back in the office, there was no single-use plastic. Instead, we replaced them with ceramic mugs and refillable, and the bottle you can buy, you refill, and we put in the water dispenser systems, and we got rid of the plastic forks and spoons and knives, and we created silver and hardware is what they call it. At first, the resistance was pretty heavy because the entitlement group, right? And where's my plastic water bottle? I know. Well, we don't look in the refrigerator. We don't have them anymore. We got rid of all the, SAP, we have like the Silicon Valley entitlement thing, right? We have to have 10 different kinds of coconut water, 13 different kinds of almond milk, 35 different kinds of soda, 15 different kinds of yogurt, all that other stuff. Because, we got the Pete's and the Starbucks people fighting over what coffee it is, and we got the plain yogurt versus the vanilla yogurt people fighting. So that we just eliminated that whole thing. Y'all equal. So it created some equitability. It also created a huge financial savings, but it also proved to the general population that SAP walks the walk. The drama's over. People have adopted it, and one of the byproducts of it was that people actually say, hey, you know what? We did this at home now. So there was some cascade positives out of it. 2000s, along comes ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Primarily, it's getting pushed out of the European Union as part of what they call the EU taxonomy. It's part of the rules and regulations. But how many people now are starting to see ESG trickle into their activities? Not many yet, but grab your belt straps, because in 2 or 3 years now, ESG is going to be part of the facility's DNA. It is part of ours now. environmental, social, and governance. Primarily around the governance side of things and how we manage things. Corporate responsibility. So that's a little bit of history. When people ask me what we do, Toby's seen this and others have been in my classes before, when we talk about sustainability, you got to look at the overall scope of our responsibilities. This is called the FM Guru Mind Map. So when people say, facilities people, what do you do? I don't want to spend 6 months trying to explain it to them. I just show them this. This is what we do. In one way, shape, form, or another. And then what's the value proposition around that, right? So in the general session yesterday, we talked about this a little bit, about the overall value. Do you know what the value of it is? The totality of the value of what you do as facilities people. I'm shocked at how many people say, I don't know. Well, you can look at, I get your budget. Okay, so what? Anybody can read a spreadsheet and say X. But what about all the other stuff? Think of all the things that we actually do, that there's elements of sustainability in it. Whether we identify it as such or not, there are elements of just about everything that facilities people do that have some element of sustainability attached to it in some way. Agree? So identify it. That's the smart move. Know your value. Any questions about this? I know it's a little fuzzy, but maybe that's because you stayed up till 2 in the morning gambling and you really can't see things, but it's a Vegas, I get it. It's a little fuzzy, right? Okay, well, fine. Actually, this presentation will be uploaded on the NFT website, so you can download it if you want. So what are some of the fundamental drivers when we use the term sustainability, right? There's always going to be some initial driver. What started this thing? Well, we're talking about now about corporate citizenship, right? This corporate social responsibility, CSR. Anybody hearing those terms in their organizations? CSR, corporate social responsibility. Okay. Well, part of that element, that's a fundamental driver of sustainability programs. Cost savings, for sure. I just gave you an example of eliminating plastic water bottles and plastic spoons, knives, and forks to the tune of $200K US a year in the United States, 1.5 and change now. It's a little bit different because this hybrid work environment, return to office, so the utilization is a lot different than it used to be. About 1.5 euro a year in cost savings. Now, with the caveat that we just did a 2024 kind of quarter Q4, Q3 close, but we did a 2023 baseline to see what this net new looks like. Because you can't compare 2023, energy savings, water savings, trash savings, anything else, to 2022 or 2021. Why? Everybody's closed, right? So when we look back at 2019, we compared 2023, 2024 to see, what were the baselines and where are we now? Our new service level agreements and key performance indicators. So once you establish your baselines, then you can go back and say, okay, well, X over Y, simple math. We're seeing more and more regulatory compliance around the topic of sustainability, especially in Europe. I mentioned earlier the EU taxonomy, saying that if you're going to be a member of the EU as a company, there's certain rules we're putting on top of you now around the technical parts of sustainability. So we have data centers around the world, 2 of them in Colorado Springs, 1 in Newtown Square, and a whole host of them in Waldorf, Germany, like 4 buildings that are just pure data center because of cloud computing and other things. We'll touch on that a bit. But those are all under the ISO 50001, according to the EU taxonomy regulations. And there's more of these regulations coming. I would say, just based on experience, probably 25-ish, 26, maybe into 27, where more of these regulations, especially if you're a global company, are going to get starting pushed out towards us in the US and beyond Canada. For sure, Mexico's looking at it right now. Brazil's way ahead of us on these things. Primarily because Brazil has a big problem with their environment because they're burning down the rainforest, so the government's kind of taking a harder stance on that. Brand reputation. I mean, do you want to be part of a company that says, oh, we use the most, we waste the most? No, probably not. So there's an element of brand reputation when it comes to the topic of sustainability. Can you say that we're headed towards zero waste? Can you say that net zero is a target? Can you say that we don't use single-use plastic? Can you say that we picked 3 or 4 of these SDG 17 goals as objectives, corporate objectives? If you can, great. Brand reputation. As I mentioned earlier, employee engagement and retention is a big deal. It depends. Okay, let me kind of break this down a little bit. It depends on the culture of where you are. Some locations around the world, Europe, specifically Germany, Netherlands, Finland, sustainability is everything. When they are attracting employees, some of the criteria to join the organization is how sustainable is, because it's part of their DNA. How sustainable is, I want to belong to a company that believes in saving the planet. Makes sense, right? But also, as we start seeing the new generations moving up into the ranks, another discussion, and the facilities management, it's part of their world. They grew up with it. So it's not a bolt-on role and responsibility for them anymore. It's part of what we do as facilities people. It's just what they expect to happen when they belong to an organization. It also gives access to markets, to new markets. If you have a formal sustainability program that you can brand, we talked about brand reputation, there is definitely a level of increased revenue. We are already tracking it. In our sustainability programs right now, there's an excess, well, I wouldn't say an excess, a separate revenue stream that we are tracking based on software sales around the topic of sustainability. It's a pretty dramatic jump from it originally started in 2017, 2018 to where it is now, like 40. I'm not going to get caught on the number because it's being filmed. Hi, Mom. Something around the 35 to 40% revenue increase because we are talking the walk and walking the talk. So there's money, yeah? Long-term resilience, sure. When we design our new facilities and we've gone through the whole return to office thing, our hybrid work environment, we are baking in sustainability topics and initiatives into those designs. I mentioned earlier, biophilic design. People want to feel healthy when they come to the environment, right? So more plants. Now, unfortunately, in the US, open windows is not a thing, but in Europe, there's very little, in some parts of Europe, there's no air conditioning. It's operable windows. That's pretty cool. Sit in your office, fresh air coming in, nice deal, right? We are trying to work through some of those long-term resilience issues. Unfortunately, what we thought, and many of you are experiencing it too, what we thought was going to be this return to office thing, okay, open the doors, everybody's coming back in, ain't happening. 33 to 40% right now is kind of the global average of people coming back into the office voluntarily, and they're still struggling with this mandated return to office issue. I'm not a social scientist or a human resource people. I don't know, but we gave the kids the lollipops and now they don't want to give them back. I can work from home in my pajamas, just put a nice shirt on for those interesting Zoom calls. I got a swimming pool in my backyard, 104 degrees outside. Stupid meeting or swimming. Friends call me up, what are you doing tomorrow? Working. Well, we got this killer golf match coming up. You want to join it? Stupid Zoom meeting or being outside? Some choice, right? I got to go, my throat's killing me. So long-term resilience, and then social responsibility. It extends beyond just who you are, but to the outside world. I mentioned earlier, how many people have young kids now? Let's say around 10-ish, somewhere in that range. Yeah? The rest of you, get busy. We need more people. Sustainability is part of their day thing, all right? It's not even a topic to them. It is baked into their DNA. As they grow up, they see these things. So as that generation gets higher and higher up in the food chain, it's just going to be part of who they are. It's part of their psyche. So we have a social responsibility to help them. I mentioned earlier the SDGs. This is a really cool tool because it helps, again, as the organization decides what things around sustainability are important. If you go to the website and you click on either one of these radio buttons, it has a whole laundry list of things that go on below it. More definitions, more descriptors, more things. It's actually pretty cool. So we picked 3 of them as the initial. I mentioned earlier, life below water, life on land, and quality education is kind of where we're going to go now. Because SAP is a software company, so educating kids around the world, and it's part of the supply chain, I guess. I love these because they're easy to read and understand. It's not some big complicated science thing that you're trying to do your net zero carbon calculations, and about 2 minutes into it you say, Jesus Christ, I need a math scientist from Harvard to explain this to me. They're easy to understand, easy to apply. Pick 1 or 2. So how do we get there? Well, in my experience, and I teach for IFMA on a global level. I have some ex-students in here, Toby and others. I teach facilities management around the world, in all kinds of countries, you name it. Middle East, Africa, South America. And we have the top, there's a very specific course called SFP, Sustainable Facility Professional. Part of the exercise I have them do is to write down barriers and how they're going to break those barriers into the sustainability world. So this is a bit of a consolidation of what they think or what they say or what they see are some of the barriers. Every single time I've done this, the first thing that comes up is as a barrier to these things is no executive sponsorship. These topics came from the bottom ups. Somebody's totally into sustainability. They say, well, we need to have EV charging stations. Now that's a whole nother story. But anyway, executive sponsorship, we don't have it, we want to do this. And then you spend all your time as facility managers doing all the math, right? The returns on investments, you do the feasibility studies, scope, time, quality. You do all the stuff you think's cool, and then you kick it up the food chain, and the CFO says, you got 3 seconds to get out of my office. So without executive sponsorship, what happens? That's right. All of the programs or initiatives that you think you should engage with or do, they need to have defined goals, objectives, and success criteria. What are we trying to do here? A business case, so to speak. Investment support from finance. I would say a majority of this engagement around sustainability is not free. If you're going to put photovoltaic systems on your roofs, not free. Or other things, if you're going to invest in new HVAC equipment that's much more effective and efficient, not free. So where's the money coming from? Fortunately, we have a set of capital funds set aside that are specifically for sustainable, and it has to be a business case, for sustainable projects. It can't be touched by new chairs and tables or whatever. It is specifically set aside for a sustainable project, but we have to write a business case so that we can get it approved. One thing that always comes up is, well, is sustainability part of my job, or is this a bolt-on, or where does this fit in my day work? Because you always hear, well, I got too much to do already, and this is just another thing, and now I'm just adding on to my... Well, if you're going to get really into it, you have to have focused roles and responsibilities. I do. I am in facilities, but no more operations. I miss it. because I'm an operations guy. It's in my blood. My role is the head of ESG and sustainability for all of the Americas, everything from Canada all the way to Brazil and all 62 locations in between those, including relationship with landlords and buildings. So when we're negotiating new leases, I get in on the conversation. Or we're looking for new space, the due diligence. But also your external roles. What about your customers, your partners, your contractors, whatever you want to call them? I've said it a million times. If they're not my partner, they're not in business with me. Because I can hire a vendor to do stuff, right? I just get the invoice, I pay it, they do it. I want partners in this, especially in new initiatives where they have the subject matter expertise that are outside of my scope. New ideas, new in whatever it may be. Here's the big issue. What part of this is getting done and by whom? Somebody has to deliver. In project management, we talk about work breakdown structuring, right? So we have the project manager, but some of the under elements have to be assigned to somebody. The larger the scope, the more complex, the less you as a sustainable project manager can do the tactical work. It gets muddied on top of your already day job. So who's doing this? When you talk about quality control and quality assurance, quality control is what we're going to check. Quality assurance is what we're going to look at when we get to that point. A lot of the sustainability programs have these elements of quality control and quality assurance. I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it 100 more times. Anytime you start talking about the topic around sustainability and new initiatives or new programs or corporate social responsibility or whatever the C-suite, what's the communication? What are you communicating and why? For instance, if you're trying to develop a new sustainable program, whatever it may be, pick one, and it involves money, and you're talking to finance people, what language are you talking to them in? Anybody? Dollars and cents, right? Or euros or yen or whatever, pesos, I don't care what it is. You have that same conversation with people in HR, what are they all about? Warm and fuzzy. Yeah? They're like, oh, I don't really care about how much. EV charging, let's go down that rabbit hole just for a minute. EV car is a good thing. Anybody own an EV in here? One person out of this whole group owns an electric vehicle. Buy Tesla, I have stock, please. So let's say 20 people buy new EVs because they think it's a cool thing, and they come to the office, and then what? Where's my charging station? Right? Well, you could use the same argument for us that drive gas-powered cars. Where's my fuel station? How come those EV people get to park in the front where it says EV only, and I got to park 2.5 miles away in a snowstorm, and take the shuttle to the work? Okay, well, let's get back into this communication thing. Why are we putting EVs in? To be good, save the environment? I don't know, it depends on how you look at it. If you follow the supply chain of electric vehicles and their batteries and plastic, they ain't that sustainable. But anyway, another conversation. I don't want to get shot on my way out the door. Just duck. So anything around sustainability has to have a communication channel in the language of the receiver and in the language of the giver. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to do? Is it net zero? Is it carbon free? Is it whatever it is? It has to be succinct, easy to understand. Here's what I say, like in my IFMA classes in project management. If you can't sell it to a 10-year-old, go back to the drawing board. Right, because we typically in facility management, we get all technical, right? We're writing pressure drops across this and weights and kilotons and all this other stuff. And you give that to HR and I go, yeah, right. What's this guy talking about? So what are the new frontiers? Any questions about that last one? Any questions about that last one? Okay. So what are some of the new frontiers? And I'm seeing this at a kind of a global, I'm giving you the big picture thing, right? The strategic view. Sustainability is becoming more and more part of core business for many reasons. Cost savings, business, I gave you all the kind of list of things. It's becoming more and more and more part of core business. Whether it's internal, which is the exemplar side of it, or the enabler. We are requiring, many of you probably already do, in your contracts with your support vendors or partners, whatever you want, I call them partners, tell me about your sustainability initiatives, right? Go down the list of, I'm just going to give you an example, go down the list of carpet suppliers. Milliken, Shaw, Constantly, all paint companies, Herman, Dunn Edwards, go down the list of your support people and have them show you what's their deal. Those are the people you want on your side because you don't have to close those chapters. They're already done for you. So your book of sustainability includes a chapter on vendor relationships. Targeted SDGs, I just showed you that. I highly encourage you to go look at them. Pick one or two. This makes sense, for sure. A lot of companies globally are now using that as their initiative platform. Can't use all 17. Forget it. 1, 2, or 3 that makes sense. As we see more push towards carbon footprinting and net zero, and how many of you are starting to see that into their world right now? How do you manage it? I don't know, turn the lights out. Well, that may work, but first of all, you got to know your baselines, right? What are we trying to measure? What are we trying to reduce? And then your sources, go back to your utility company. What is their source? Or are they coal, nuclear, hydro? What's their blend? You got to peel that onion layer back and go back to the beginning and say, well, if we're going to get to carbon zero, net zero, whatever you want to call it, is it across the supply chain, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, or is it just what we consume? Because there's a big spread between scope 1 and scope 3 of engagement. It's not as simple as saying, well, you know what, we just won't buy that. It doesn't work that way. We talked earlier about the effects of hybrid. Baselines. I don't know where this is going, honestly. I've been in this business a long, long time. This is one of the mysteries. Nobody can really explain why that, we spend all this money and create these really cool offices and open desk seating and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden you say, well, come in and come back to work or whatever it is. Please come back to work because we have all this real estate we spend all this money on and nobody's working. And I don't know why people aren't doing it. I have a sneaking suspicion, like I mentioned earlier, we gave the kids the lollipops and they don't want to give them back. But that definitely has an effect on sustainability, right? Because if you're reducing your portfolio size, that's reduction of leasing and money and things. So we don't know what the balance is yet. I've said more than once, I say we got to give this to 2026. We shut down for 2 years, 2.5 years, right? Lock the doors, everybody figure out their new life. We open the doors back up, we created these new environments. Do we go back to 2018, 2017 baselines? Maybe. I don't know yet. But we've been in facilities in the normal business for thousands or hundreds of years. We're going back to history. Now all of a sudden you close the doors and then you reopen the doors, and in 1 year you want something to change? It's going to take time. Cloud computing for sure. Talk to all these vendors on the floor now that are selling software. Where are their solutions at? In the cloud, off-premise, not on-premise anymore. Along with that comes the power consumption. Where's this power consumption coming from? Don't tell me from solar, from wind or hydro. You barely can keep the door locks open, right? It's nice to have wind power, but what happens if there's no wind? Nice to have solar, but what happens in the wintertime when it's snowing for like a month and a half? Where's this stuff coming from? This is my personal opinion. I think we should start embracing nuclear again. I know, don't kill me. Because the old thing of like Fukushima and 3 Mile Island, it's a different technology now. You can do micro nukes that are, the size of this table that can run a building, no problem. But for whatever reason, environmentalists with investment, I don't know whether it's I don't know why it's not happening. But if you really want to talk about getting to net zero, you don't have to worry about nuclear waste anymore. Shit, give it to Elon Musk. He'll shoot that stuff up onto Mars, no problem. He knows how to do it. AI to support qualitative decisions in the sustainability world? Maybe. I think the jury's still out on AI as far as what the relationship to facilities is, right? I mean, can AI clean the restrooms? Mow the lawn? It can help us on qualitative. That's what I said. We embrace AI as helping us to make qualitative decisions versus quantitative decisions. Because I can tell you how much I spend on my janitorial service on an annualized basis. I know what the budget is, but I can't tell you whether that service is quality service or not. So I think AI is going to help us on qualitative decisions around the topic of sustainability. Do I really need to clean the restroom every day? Depends on who. The college campus, yeah, probably 3 times a day, but okay, whatever. ESG, I mentioned it earlier, it's coming. It's pretty strong in Europe right now. It's coming to America. I say by 2026, ESG is going to be part of our natural language, of whatever component, environmental, social, or governance. And then, this is something I don't understand, and I'm not sure where to go with it, but there was kind of a rush in the early 2020s about dedicated sustainability jobs, right? You'd go on the website and sustainable person and the job positions were posted. But it's kind of stalled now, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because we in facilities have already embraced that part of our roles and responsibilities. I'm not sure why. But you go on like LinkedIn and look for jobs, sustainability, there's not that many. You would think, this being such a massive global topic, it'd be like one of the most wanted people in the world. Not many. I'm not sure why. I really am not. Okay. So let's close this off. So in closing, kind of recap. No sponsorship, limited impact. No purpose, no clear initiative. Why are we doing this? Save money, help people, save the planet, whatever it is. Any current and future projects definitely need a project charter. Anybody know what project charter is? Project charters? It kind of wraps things up, right? It's your foundational document. Who's doing what? What's the sponsorship? What are we trying to do? In a condensed version, like 1 page, 2 page, that everybody could read. This is a question I'm asking a lot of people right now. If it's becoming much more part of your day job thing, bolt on to your current day job, do you have the capacity and capability to handle it? I know y'all want to raise, say, yeah, Mikey will do it. Yeah, we'll do it. Raise, you sure, no problem. And then you volunteer for something and you start getting into it and you go, uh-oh. What happened here? Do you have the capacity and capability, the hard and soft skills, not only of you, but your other resources? Because potentially some of these projects, you're going to have to pull resources from project management or finance or HR or other demand organizations people and external people, the subject matter experts, right? If you're going to put in a new chiller system because it's a new thing to do, you're going to have to have third-party people come in and help you. Do you have the capacity and capability to handle this? If not, what does that food chain look like? These things, these big initiatives, don't happen in a vacuum. There's a lot of moving parts. You need to define the risks of doing or not doing. Avoid those risks where at all possible. Mitigate those risks, which means stop them from happening, or transfer the risk, like your third party people that help you on these projects, janitorial, landscaping, HVAC people, I don't care who they are. What does their contract say about them and their sustainability world? Because you want to transfer that risk to them, right? If you're going to need external resources, you got to be precise on what that means. Potentially it's going to cost you more money, like a separate contract, maybe a consultant, whatever it may be, but it has to be precise. What's the requirement? What's the service level agreement? What's the KPI? How we measure? Because the majority, my experience is the majority of these sustainability programs and initiatives, there has to be some performance indicator. Otherwise, they're just cool things. If we're going to go to net zero, we have to establish a baseline, and what are we going to do about getting there? Right? I don't know all the answers to that, so we use external consultants to help us understand that. There's many out there. There's some cool ones in the commercial world, CBRE, Colliers, others. There's probably 4 or 5 vendors out here on the expo floor that can help you get to that discussion point. But be very, I'm not going to try and offend any vendors in here, so please don't. Be very careful on what you're asking them to do for you. It can't be a shotgun approach, because then it's a never-ending consultation. Be precise and understand what we call sunk costs are. If we're going to get from here, once we agree on all these things, if we're going to go from here to there, how much is it going to cost up front? This single-use plastic initiative I mentioned to you, it cost us a lot of money, some cost up front, because we had to buy the plates, the cups, the spoons, the water dispenser machines, and all that stuff. It wasn't a one-for-one relationship. So what's it going to cost to do these things? And that's it for me. Any questions? Yes, sir. The question was, in the buildings and he sees the plaque on the wall that says we're cool, right? Either LEED or Energy Star or whatever. Remember, Energy Star, you have to re-up for it. Energy Star is relatively free, but you have to have your baselines. You can do it online. Meet a portfolio manager. It's a good thing. It goes back to the conversation about doing baselines. Know your baselines first. LEED, I don't know. We build to LEED standards, but we don't certify LEED anymore because it's expensive. If you're going LEED Platinum, you're looking at almost $50,000, $60,000 just to get the consultant in. So build to, our construction standards are build to at a minimum, silver. Anybody else? Cool. Take care, enjoy the show.